Picture this: a golden retriever, chest deep in murky water, refusing to let go of something precious in her mouth. Her amber eyes are filled with determination as she paddles against the current, fighting with every ounce of strength she has. But what she's carrying isn't a stick or a ball. It's a tiny lion cub, barely breathing, its golden fur matted and lifeless. What happens next will restore your faith in the incredible bonds that exist in nature, bonds that transcend species, instinct, and everything we think we know about the animal kingdom. Before we dive into this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications to catch more heartwarming stories like this one. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel around the world. Our story begins in the heart of Kenya's Masai Mara, where the vast savanna stretches endlessly under the African sun. This is where we meet Bella, a 3-year-old golden retriever who lived with her human family at a wildlife research station. Unlike most dogs who might cower at the sight of Africa's big cats, Bella had grown up surrounded by the sounds of the wild. The distant roars of lions, the calls of elephants, the whoops of hyenas in the night. Her humans, Dr. Sarah Mitchell and her husband James, were wildlife veterinarians who had dedicated their lives to studying and protecting Kenya's incredible wildlife. They'd brought Bella with them from Colorado 2 years earlier, never imagining that their family pet would one day become the hero of a story that would touch hearts around the world. The research station sat near the Mara River, a lifeline that cuts through the savanna like a brown ribbon. During the dry season, animals from miles around would come to drink from its waters. But during the rainy season, well, that's when the river becomes a completely different beast. It was early March when the heavy rains began. Day after day, the sky opened up, transforming the gentle river into a raging torrent. The research team had seen this before, but this year felt different. The water levels rose higher than anyone had seen in decades, turning the riverbanks into treacherous mud traps. About 3 miles upstream from the research station lived a pride of lions that Dr. Mitchell had been studying for over a year. The pride was led by a magnificent lioness named Amara, a name that means grace in Swahili, and she truly lived up to it. Amara was a devoted mother to 3 cubs, each about 4 months old, still playful and curious about their world. The cubs were at that adorable age where everything was an adventure. They would tumble over each other, pounce on their mother's tail, and practice their tiny roars that sounded more like squeaky toys than the kings of the jungle they would one day become. But as the rains continued to fall, Amara began to worry. The river near their territory was rising, and she could sense danger approaching. Lions, despite their incredible strength and hunting prowess, are not natural swimmers. The cubs especially would be helpless if the water reached their den. On March 15th, Dr. Mitchell received an urgent radio call from a ranger stationed upstream. The river had breached its banks. A flash flood was heading their way, and it was moving fast. Amara heard it first, that low, rumbling sound that every animal in Africa instinctively fears. It wasn't the growl of a rival pride or the charge of an angry buffalo. It was the sound of water. Massive amounts of water rushing toward them with unstoppable force. She immediately began moving her cubs to higher ground, carrying them one by one in her powerful jaws. But the smallest cub, a little male with a distinctive black patch around his left eye, was always the curious one. As Amara carried her siblings to safety, he wandered back toward the sound, fascinated by this new and exciting noise. The wall of water hit like a freight train. Trees that had stood for decades were uprooted in seconds. The landscape transformed from solid ground to a violent, churning river in the blink of an eye. Amara had just placed her second cub on high ground when she heard it, a tiny, desperate cry almost lost in the roar of the flood. Her heart stopped. Where was her third cub? She spotted him just as a massive wave swept him away. The little guy was tumbling helplessly in the brown water, his tiny paws flailing as he tried desperately to keep his head above the surface. But he was so small, and the current was so powerful. Amara roared, a sound filled with such anguish and desperation that it seemed to shake the very earth. She wanted to jump in after him, but her instincts told her what we all know. She wouldn't be able to save him. She could only watch in horror as her baby disappeared around a bend in the raging river. 3 miles downstream, Bella was doing what she did every morning, playing fetch with James in the compound's yard. The research station was on a higher ground, so while they could hear the roar of the flood, they felt relatively safe. But Bella suddenly stopped mid-play. Her ears perked up, her head tilted, and she began whining in a way James had never heard before. It was urgent, almost frantic. "What is it, girl?" James called out, but Bella was already running, not toward the house, not toward the food bowls, but straight toward the swollen river. James dropped the tennis ball and ran after her, shouting her name, but Bella was on a mission. She reached the riverbank just as a small golden shape came tumbling through the violent water. Without hesitation, Bella plunged in. The current immediately grabbed her, trying to sweep her downstream, but golden retrievers were bred for water rescue, and Bella's instincts kicked in completely. She fought against the current, her powerful legs propelling her toward the tiny, struggling form. James reached the riverbank just in time to see Bella grab something in her mouth. His heart nearly stopped when he realized what it was. A lion cub, barely breathing, its golden fur matted and lifeless. Bella had never held anything so precious or fragile in her mouth. Every instinct told her to be gentle, even as the river tried to tear them both away. She turned toward shore, fighting against the current with every ounce of strength she possessed. James waded in as far as he dared, stretching out his arms. "Come on, Bella, you can do it!" For what felt like an eternity, it looked like the river might win. Bella was tiring, and the little cub in her mouth was completely limp. But then, somehow, she found that extra reserve of strength that heroes always seem to find when they needed most. She reached James's outstretched arms and gently, so incredibly gently, placed the cub in his hands before collapsing in exhaustion. The little cub wasn't breathing. James immediately began CPR, pressing gently on the tiny chest, clearing water from the small mouth. "Come on, little guy, come on!" Dr. Mitchell came running with her veterinary kit. Together they worked frantically to save the life that Bella had risked everything to rescue. And then, a tiny cough. A small gasp. Those little golden eyes fluttered open, and the cub let out the tiniest mew you've ever heard. Bella, still dripping wet and exhausted, immediately crawled over and began gently licking him dry, as if he were his own puppy.
Dr. Mitchell made the difficult decision to care for the cub until they could figure out a plan. They set up a temporary enclosure and began bottle feeding him around the clock. But here's what amazed everyone. Bella never left his side. She would lie next to the enclosure, whimpering softly whenever the cub cried. When it was feeding time, she would gently nudge Dr. Mitchell's arm as if to say, "It's time." She had appointed herself as this little lion's guardian angel. 3 days passed. The cub, whom they'd named Hope, was growing stronger, but Dr. Mitchell knew he belonged with his real family. Using radio collars and tracking data, they located Amara and her remaining cubs about 5 miles away, still in their temporary high-ground shelter. The reunion plan was risky. They would transport Hope in a carrier, with Bella, surprisingly, coming along. Dr. Mitchell had noticed something incredible. Hope responded to Bella's presence. When she was near, he was calm. When she left, he became distressed. On the morning of the reunion, they loaded Hope and Bella into the research vehicle. As they approached Amara's location, they could hear her calling, that low, mournful sound a mother makes when she's lost her child. Dr. Mitchell stopped the vehicle about 100 yards from where Amara was resting with her remaining 2 cubs. The plan was to release Hope and retreat quickly, letting nature take its course. But as they opened the carrier, something unexpected happened. Hope was still weak, and instead of running toward his mother, he stumbled and fell. Bella immediately jumped out of the vehicle. "Bella, no!" James shouted, but it was too late. Everyone held their breath as Bella gently picked up Hope and began walking toward the pride. This was the moment that could go terribly wrong. A 150-pound lioness protecting her cubs faced with a domesticated dog carrying her baby. But Amara did something that left everyone speechless. She stood up slowly, her eyes locked on Bella. And then she began to approach, not in an aggressive crouch, but in a careful, measured walk. Bella stopped about 10 feet away and gently placed Hope on the ground. The little cub mewed and began crawling toward his mother. What happened next will be etched in Dr. Mitchell's memory forever. Amara reached her cub and began frantically licking and nuzzling him, checking every inch to make sure he was okay. Then she looked up at Bella, and she did something that lions simply don't do with other species. She approached Bella and gently touched her nose to Bella's nose. For just a moment, these 2 mothers, one wild, one domesticated, shared an understanding that transcended everything we think we know about the animal kingdom. In the days that followed, something beautiful continued to unfold. Dr. Mitchell's team set up a discreet observation post to monitor the reunion. What they witnessed challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies relationships. Amara would bring her cubs, including Hope, to a spot near the research station's perimeter. And there, separated by the fence but clearly interacting, Bella and Amara seemed to maintain their unlikely friendship. Bella would lie by the fence, and Amara would rest nearby with her cubs. Hope, stronger now and growing rapidly, would often play near the fence where Bella could see him. It was as if Amara understood that Bella had saved her child's life, and this was her way of saying thank you. Dr. Mitchell documented this behavior for several weeks before the pride eventually moved on, following the natural rhythms of the wild. But even as they prepared to leave, Amara brought Hope one last time to the fence. Bella seemed to understand it was goodbye. She whined softly and placed her paw against the fence. On the other side, Hope mewed back, as if he too understood that he was saying farewell to the dog who had saved his life. Today, nearly 2 years later, Dr. Mitchell still gets reports from rangers in the area about a young male lion with a distinctive black patch around his left eye. Hope, now nearly adult-sized, has been spotted thriving in the wild with his family. Bella still lives at the research station, still playing fetch, still being the loving companion she's always been. But sometimes, Dr. Mitchell catches her looking toward the savannah with what can be described as a sense of pride.